Welcome to the program. My guest is Siva Vaidyanathan. He is a professor of media studies at the University of Virginia and the celebrated author of The Googlization of Everything. His most recent book is Intellectual Property, a very short introduction. Siva is also the executive director of the Center for Media and Citizenship, which sponsors this very program. Welcome back to the show. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks, Coy. Yeah, it's good to be here.
I want to talk about the most recent book that you're currently writing.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do, what's the takeaway from this? This is a very thin book. It is by title, a very short introduction.
Right.
But what's the takeaway here?
So Oxford University Press puts out a whole series, hundreds of these books, where they find an expert in the field and they ask him or her to write 120 pages worth of material as a very short introduction to a much larger topic. The idea being, where would you start? So it's much longer than an encyclopedia article, much deeper than an encyclopedia article. So instead of just laying out the facts, it actually engages with some of the debates and arguments and history of the idea, but in a way that should invite the reader to dig deeper. So the best part of this book is the bibliography, which guides you through all the best work about intellectual property, trademarks, copyrights, patents, trade secrets, and is pretty clear about distinguishing among those various areas. I wrote it because I think there's so much public misunderstanding of how intellectual property works. There's curiosity about it. Everyone sort of talks about it, often misuses the terms. And I thought this is a really easy way for people to sort of clarify what they're talking about and clarify their questions and know where to go if they want to go deeper with their questions. It actually opens in Charlottesville. It opens with me writing at the Starbucks in Pantops. I don't know if you've been there lately, but the Starbucks in Pantops has like a quote from Jefferson about coffee, the importance of coffee, and mentions that one of Jefferson's friends patented the very first coffee grinder in the United States of America. And our patent system and our copyright system are both embedded in the Constitution among the enumerated powers that the Constitution gives to Congress, Article 1, Section 8. And within that, basically the Constitution, at James Madison's insistence, instructs Congress to set up a copyright system and a patent system. Copyrights to protect poems, patents to protect inventions, or as I say, mousetraps. Like copyrights are for poems, patents are for mousetraps. And so it's really important to keep those distinctions. But it's also so there is a local angle to this, right? You've got Jefferson, who thought a lot about intellectual property. You've got Madison, who was the chief instigator at the Constitutional Convention for making sure Congress considered that a priority. You know, the Constitution doesn't require Congress to do very much. It's a pretty short list in Article 1, Section 8, but intellectual property is on that list. And there was a huge debate between Madison and Jefferson over the nature of intellectual property, especially copyright, and whether the state, whether the government should be creating monopoly systems through such licensing. Of course, Jefferson, being the most anti-monopoly of the two, was hesitant.
There is actually a place in a letter Jefferson writes to Madison saying that he had hoped that the actual Bill of Rights would have included keeping people free from monopolies.
That's right.
And by that he meant, of course, the power of the government to lock down intellectual property and prevent the free market from taking advantage of ideas.
And this argument, this high-minded argument between Jefferson and Madison, two buddies, that argument that instilled itself in so many of the early decisions about what we now call media policy in the United States, in the early republic, is with us today. That question, what is copyright for? What should its limitations be? At what point does it cross over into being a dangerous monopoly? All of that is explained in this book in what I hope is really clear, lively prose. And I actually start out by sitting at that Starbucks in Pantops and saying, I'm looking around me. I'm looking at the way that Starbucks as a company developed its look and feel of being in the store, which is protected by their lawyers. How Starbucks designs its logo and its coffee sleeves. How there are actually multiple patents on those coffee sleeves. Believe it or not, it's an invention, which says something about how mad or crazy our patent system is, and just how much Starbucks itself is an intellectual property company first and a beverage company second.
Yeah.
So that's this book.
It's fascinating. Really, it's interesting.
It's a result of a couple decades now of work I've been doing on the ways that intellectual property affects American culture. But that really taps into these larger questions, same kind of questions that Jefferson and Madison had at the beginning of the Republic, sitting around on the veranda at one or the other mansion and chewing it through. And they worried about how our Republic could have a quality source of information, how our Republic could have forums for deliberation that would be reasonable, open, dependable, where people could disagree without being disagreeable, right? Those are all the obsessions of the Republican moment, which is the same concern that leads me into my next work, which is about trying to make sense of how Facebook is changing us, altering our republic, altering politics, not just in the United States, but worldwide.
So Siva, you are recognized as the scholar, the cultural historian who wrote arguably the book on Google, the Googleization of everything. And now you have turned your attention to Facebook.
Sure.
And we are expecting that book over the next year. You're at work on it now, and this conversation will give us a preview of where your head is at.
Yeah.
When you turn your attention to Facebook and social media, what's crossing your mind as you're putting this book together?
The chief thing is that we're all turning our attention to Facebook. Facebook, by the time the book comes out in early 2018, will have 2 billion regular users. That's stunning.
On this one social media platform.
On this one planet, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
On the one planet.
And that doesn't count like Instagram or WeChat, the other things that it's it's
that are part of the
attached to,
Facebook
right?
family.
Yeah. So it is such a tremendous influence in our daily lives. I know it's a tremendous influence in your daily life. It's a tremendous influence in my daily life. Is it positive or negative? Well, here's my take on it. For each of us, and for just about everybody of the 2 billion users, it is a net positive. It is, like, on balance, a good thing in our lives. It enhances our lives. Because face it, if it did not enhance our lives, we wouldn't bother with it. It's a huge tax on our attention. We all have more productive things we could be doing than the hour or more that we spend with Facebook. But the fact is, it gives us something. In fact, for many of us, it gives us multiple things. Now, for some people, it's more valuable than for other people, right?
Right.
And that changes it depending on where you are in life and what your concerns are in life and how much time you have in life. For my parents who are retired, they spend what many might consider an unhealthy amount of time on Facebook, right? My daughter, who's 11, has absolutely no interest in Facebook. There's nothing there that tempts her in the least. So, and I think we're all somewhere between those two poles, right?
Yeah.
Now, but nonetheless, 2 billion people using it regularly across the world.
Remarkable.
And growing fast, right? And secondly, even just in the United States, as many as 60% of Americans use Facebook to learn about the world through news services that are posted to Facebook.
Which is a key thing here, right? It's not just a social media platform for people to stay in touch with each other. It has become a news source.
Right. So this is where it turns. While Facebook, on balance, is good for Coy Barefoot, while Facebook is on balance good for Siva Vaidyanathan, collectively, as a society, as a polis, right, a group of citizens, as a species, Facebook is actually on balance bad for us. So it can be simultaneously good for you, good for me, and bad for all of us.
And bad for us as a community, as a nation that needs to engage in these conversations and share news.
Think about it. It sounds paradoxical. It's not that unusual. The fact that you drove a car, right? Your car is good for you. My car is good for me. It does important things for us, or we wouldn't bother with the price and the cost but nonetheless, collectively, the automobile is terrible for the species, for the planet, for the country, right? We would all be better off if we didn't need it, if we had never invented it, or if we had managed it, and this is really where the key is, if we had managed it in a more intelligent and aware ways to minimize what economists call the externalities, and maximize the payoff to each of us, even if we have to curb the payoff.
But that requires real long-term thinking.
It requires long-term
American
thinking.
business isn't always so good at.
Yeah, but it also requires civic thinking, consumer education, straight up civic education.
Yeah.
It requires the willingness to regulate. It requires an awareness and a distillation and a definition of the problem. That's where books come in, right? That's people who do my job. This is what we do. We identify issues and problems. We explore their complexities. Hopefully, if we do it well, we do it honestly, we do it straightforwardly, we do it in both a sophisticated way and a digestible way. And then we hope that readers out there can take our ideas, accept some of them, reject others, and build momentum toward addressing these problems. Now, Facebook, though, one of the reasons I love these.
It's not how Facebook operates.
Yeah, but I love these big intractable challenges, right? These big behemoth phenomena in our lives, like Google, like Facebook, because they're not simple, because they're not simply good or evil, because you can't just slam one of these companies as doing horrible things in the world. I could go after tobacco companies, I could go after petroleum companies, you could go after gun manufacturers. Those are easy targets, right? But these companies and the work they do is so important to so many people for so many good reasons. At the same time, we cannot idealize them, nor can we demonize them. So the real challenge here is to figure out, for each of us individually, what our level of engagement and investment should be in these companies, and then collectively, what are our responsibilities as citizens and as organized consumers to pushing back at these companies.
And to think critically, to borrow on that car metaphor, to think about some of the externalities that these platforms present to us.
That's right.
That could be damaging.
Now, some of those externalities are privacy problems, right? The fact that Facebook and companies like Facebook vacuum up, or as I hope the British edition says, hoover up, all of this data, right? All of that, not just data, but like our thoughts, our transgressions, our confessions, our travels around the web, our fetishes and fantasies.
In a way we've never seen before in human history.
And they do that
ever
for two reasons. They do that, one, and I'm talking about both Facebook and Google, the two big players in this. Number one, they do that to be able to serve us better. And they say that repeatedly, and they actually mean it, even if it's not the whole story. By that I mean they want, when you do a Google search or when you engage with Facebook, both of those companies are executing a value through their algorithms, right? Because no algorithm is neutral. And the value, the bias that they're pushing forth is familiarity, is sort of a positive feedback with the substance. So what I mean by that is...
A kind of comfort?
Comfort, right. So if you've told Google over the years that you're interested in this, that, and the other kind of material, this kind of sports story, this kind of music story, this kind of political thing, Google will, over time, using your history, structure your web searches so that it gives you more of the same. Facebook does exactly the same thing. It doesn't necessarily read the content itself. Facebook can't tell whether, and Google either, can't tell whether this story is from a liberal point of view and this story is from a conservative point of view. But they both track the sources and your interaction with those sources. So in your Facebook newsfeed, if you're consistently seeing material from Fox News or from Breitbart, and you're interacting with that material, so let's say a cousin or an uncle or a friend, posts it and it shows up in your newsfeed. If you're interacting either with that person who posted it, your friend, your uncle, your cousin, your coworker, and you're hitting like a lot, or you're commenting a lot, or you're yourself sharing that material or bringing it in from other websites into Facebook, both of those are signals to Facebook. Hey, Coy really digs this stuff. So next time Coy comes back, let's give him more of what he likes. Because the idea, it's a very consumerist idea, that you know what's relevant to you. And we want to serve you what's relevant for you. Now, just as I wrote about Google, this is great for shopping, right? You should be directed to the sorts of products, the sorts of influences, the sorts of services that you, as an adult, have
Right.
sort of forged in your head. Like, why waste your time with high heel shoes if you are not into high heel shoes?
Right.
Why waste your time with Nike if you're into Adidas, right?
But that's shopping.
That's shopping. If you're talking about the practice of citizenship, it could not be worse. Not only does it filter us into our own bubbles, both of these services do, although Facebook is actually much more powerful about it now, but it doubles down on our own pre-existing inclination to do that. We both have confirmation bias. We love it when something comes up on our Facebook feed that shows us, you were right.
You were right. You were right.
I'm right. I'm really smart. And now this Supreme Court story says I was right all along. I'm clicking on the like.
Who
I'm
doesn't love
sharing
that?
it to my
Who doesn't love
friends.
that? Yeah.
I'm commenting on it. I'm putting a little jokey headline on top. I'm giving it all this love. And when you give it all that love, right, that's going to create a feedback loop. That's going to mean that's my public presentation to everybody who follows me. That's going to be the stuff I see more. What falls away is anything that might trouble me or disagree with me. That's a problem, but here's what to complicate it even more, and this is why it's bad for all of us collectively. The people in my life, out of my Facebook friends and family members, who like different things, who engage with different thoughts and ideas, they will slowly slough away from my Facebook feed, and I won't be able to engage with those people. And on the occasion when I do, when I see something from one of my uncles that I disagree with, and I go back and forth with him in the comment section, Facebook is structured in such a way that it doesn't really encourage deep thought and deliberation. Its very nature, its very layout limits our ability to engage politely, deeply, in a sophisticated way, in a way that you and I might if we were sitting around a coffee shop.
Sure.
Right? And which we have. We've disagreed about things, and we can work it out. But the times I've appeared in your Facebook feed, I sound nothing but belligerent. I don't sound like the scholarly gentleman I like to think I am, right? I sound like a real jerk on your Facebook page, right? So that's one of the reasons that I think Facebook's great for motivation, though, right? Facebook is really great if you want to start a movement. If you want to bring down the government of Egypt, it's not a bad place to launch a movement, right?
Right.
It's a pretty good place for local activism, consumer activism, but it's a really bad place for deliberation, discussion, and debate.
And it takes the bubbles, if I hear you right, it takes the bubbles that we like to put ourselves in, and it turns those bubbles into bunkers.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the threat to citizenship.
That's right.
Which it's an old idea, it's hundreds of years old, but it relies on the idea that we're all going to gather together somehow and have a conversation. We're talking with Siva Vaidyanathan of the Center for Media and Citizenship and Media Studies at the University of Virginia. A quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking with Siva Vaidyanathan of the Department of Media Studies at the University of Virginia. He is at work on a new book, comes out early next year, 2018, about Facebook, which, as you explained to us, Siva, there's some good stuff about Facebook, and there's some real troubling externalities about Facebook that really it concretizes, in a way, the problems that we're seeing now with democracy, not just America, but with democracy, that it really reifies the tribal partisanship that's out there. And it pushes people into camps. In the 19th century, it was a regional debate that led to the Civil War. But now we're seeing these kind of platforms, as gasoline to a flame, they're really making that partisan tribalism quite troubling.
So I have a lovely neighbor who, we're really good friends. Kids are growing up together. He and I disagree politically about many things. He and I don't interact on Facebook. We interact in the neighborhood, but we're civically severed from each other. And I think this is a pretty common phenomenon. Yet there are people 2 continents away who I deal with almost on a daily basis through Facebook, who I agree with, and I can actually fire them up about an issue, right? Now there might be, and I actually think there are, some issues that my neighbor and I would agree on.
Yeah.
And if we had a local concern, we could motivate each other to work toward it. And if we had a difference, we might be able to have a long, deep conversation and come to some sort of agreement on certain basics, or maybe even a path forward.
Yeah, if the highway department were proposing to put a new highway right through your neighborhood, I'll bet you and your neighbor could get on Facebook and agree, be on the same page, and talk about a plan forward to take on the highway department.
Think about something even more thorny, healthcare policy, right? Which we have had a huge debate for almost 20 years in this country. People are at all different positions on what should happen, if anything. My friend and I probably disagree right now on what our path forward, or even an opinion about the status quo. But because my political life and his political life are executed on Facebook and not across our fence or in our front yard, we are incapable of having a conversation that either enlightens either one or both of us, that humanizes the conversation, or perhaps arrives at some sort of consensus, which is how a republic is supposed to work. That's what citizens in a republic are supposed to do, and he and I are not doing it, because we're exhausting what little time we have to engage in politics with like-minded people on Facebook, reading like-minded sources fed to us through Facebook, and we're not the only ones. And this is happening to me, and I'm watching it happen to me, and it's not good. It's not good. Now, that's just what's happening in the United States. I'm sorry to report that as bad as things are politically in the United States, and Facebook is a major player in it, although not the leading cause, a major player, things are much worse in other places. So for instance, in Burma, or Myanmar as the government likes to call it, they have had access to digital media for about 4 years. During that time, Facebook was able to get in on everyone's mobile phones really early. And so basically the encounter with information through digital streams occurs entirely through Facebook. The entire country, there is no difference between Facebook and the internet. The same is true in the Philippines. Even though the Philippines has been online longer, Filipinos have been using text messaging for political activism for decades now. Nonetheless, Facebook is so powerful, especially among poor rural communities, that it is the chief vehicle for political activism and news delivery in the Philippines.
It's not just the virtual public sphere, it is the public sphere.
Absolutely, and you can see the ramifications in both places. So right now in Burma, there's genocide going on. The Rohingya minority, a Muslim minority that lives in the western part of Burma, has been systematically slaughtered by the majority Buddhist population. And the bigotry that used to be bubbling at a low level is now at a peak level, largely driven by hate groups using Facebook to pump up people's animosity toward this group. And it's just been a brutal, bloody near genocide. And in the Philippines, we've seen the rise of Duterte as president, a murderous thug who's basically openly creating a completely law-free system where he instructs his troops and his police to just gun people down in the street if there's a rumor that they're a drug dealer.
Which an approach to governing which our president has praised.
Right. Yeah. So these things are somewhat and scarily connected. Nonetheless, he rose to power, first as a mayor, then as a governor, then as president, largely by employing large numbers of people to post things systematically on Facebook and spread propaganda, pro-Duterte propaganda on Facebook. He is the first Facebook president I can think of. Now,
so the externalities of Facebook aren't just, we got about 2 minutes left here, they're not just troubling signs that perhaps cripple democracy and the nuts and bolts of democracy that we need to work if we are going to live in a world where democracy can preserve and strengthen human liberties. It not only does that, it actually strengthens the agenda, the MO, the goals of authoritarian regimes.
Sure, because what works on Facebook are things at a high emotional register, whether those are baby photos, dog videos, or calls to genocide, right? Scapegoating calls to genocide. Those things fly around Facebook. And you can see that sensationalism flowing out of Russia into the Ukraine, into Ukraine. You can see that kind of stuff flowing out of Russia into the United States, into England, into France, into Germany. Facebook is a major vehicle for the steady, systematic destabilization of democracy across the world.
Which, of course, I'm not going to throw the, well, what do we do, Siva? Because that's not fair. But I think we'd both agree that clearly, as your book will do, it'll really put the spotlight and zero in on and explicate some of these externalities and these troubling manifestations of the social media platforms we use to substitute for true democratic conversations. And hopefully this will lead to a larger conversation that doesn't just embrace this as the new public sphere, but recognizes that there's some real challenges to human freedom by doing so.
Absolutely.
And that we should have a conversation about, well, what can we do about it?
Meanwhile, I'll see you on Facebook.
I'll see you on Facebook as well. And you can join us on Facebook, the Center for Media and Citizenship, and you can find the complete archive of this program online at mediaandcitizenship.org. Have a terrific week, and you all be good to each other.